Have you ever really stopped to wonder what wealth looks like? I mean, for most of us, a picture probably pops into our heads. The fancy cars, huge houses, designer everything. But what if I told you that picture is, well, mostly a myth? That the people who look rich are often just one paycheck away from disaster. While the truly wealthy, they're people you'd walk right past and never even notice. For 20 years, two researchers, Thomas Stanley and William Danko, did something pretty amazing. They went out and found real millionaires, not the celebrities or lottery winners, but just ordinary folks who had quietly built up a fortune. And what they found? It just turns everything we think we know about money completely upside down. Because real wealth isn't loud, it's quiet. So let's dive into this really surprising world of the millionaire next door. Okay, to really get to the heart of what they discovered, I want you to just picture two different men. We're going to take a peek into their lives for a minute, see the world through their eyes, and look at the choices they make. This one comparison, it's the key that unlocks the entire book. It's the perfect way to see that massive difference between how things look and how they really are.
So on one side, we've got a physician. He is at the absolute top of his game, making around $700,000 a year. His life looks like it's straight out of a magazine. He lives in this gorgeous home in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. There's a brand new Mercedes sitting in the driveway. His kids go to the fanciest private schools, and he spends his weekends at the country club. He is the very picture of success. Now, on the other side, we have a guy who owns a paving business. It's gritty work. He paves driveways, parking lots. He earns a good but way more modest $90,000 a year. He lives in a simple little ranch house in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood, and he drives an 8-year-old Ford pickup truck.
Okay, so who's actually richer? I mean, most people, they wouldn't even hesitate. They'd point right at the doctor. But they would be completely 100% wrong. You see, the doctor, even with that huge income, is drowning. That beautiful house, it's got a massive mortgage. That Mercedes, it's got a crazy high monthly lease payment. The private schools, the club, the fancy vacations, it's just a nonstop, relentless river of cash flowing out. He's stuck on this treadmill, running faster and faster just to keep up the image. The paving contractor, though, he's got over $3 million in investments. He owns his home, free and clear. He has zero debt. He could stop working tomorrow and live comfortably for the rest of his life, totally in control. He is the wealthy one.
That story right there perfectly explains the main discovery of the millionaire next door. And it's a lesson that's so simple, it can honestly be a little painful to hear for the first time. It all boils down to understanding one fundamental and often totally misunderstood difference: the difference between income and wealth. Wealth is not the same as income. Just let that sink in for a second. Income is the river of money that flows into your life. And yeah, it can be a really powerful current, but it's always moving. Wealth is what you manage to keep. It's the reservoir you build, the solid ground you create under your feet. Income buys you nice things. It creates the appearance of being well off. But real wealth buys you freedom. Freedom from worry, freedom from a job you can't stand, the freedom to live your life completely on your own terms. Look, if you make $200,000 a year but you spend $210,000, you're not wealthy. You're just broke at a higher level. But if you make $50,000 a year and you have the discipline to live on 40 and you invest the rest, you are quietly but surely building your own mountain. You're building wealth. So the book gives us the simple but really powerful formula to kind of measure how well we're doing at turning our income into actual wealth. Think of it like a quick financial checkup. You just take your age and you multiply it by your pre-tax annual income from all your sources. Then you divide that number by 10. And that result, that's what your net worth should be based on your age and your income. So for example, let's say you're 50 years old and your total income is $100,000. Okay, so 50 times 100,000 is 5 million. Divide that by 10 and you get $500,000. That's your expected net worth. And this is where the study gets really fascinating because it starts to sort people into categories based on this formula. If your actual net worth is double your expected net worth, so in our example, that'd be $1 million, the study calls you a prodigious accumulator of wealth, or a PA. These are the people who are just masters at building wealth. They are the real millionaires next door. But if your net worth is less than half of what it should be, say $250,000 in our example, you're what they call an underaccumulator of wealth, or a UAW. And here's the most profound and honestly kind of painful part of the research. The UAWs, the underaccumulators, are so often the high-income people who look the most successful. They're the doctors with the Mercedes. They're living in a house of cards, financially fragile, and just one bad day away from their all coming crashing down. So this brings us to a quiet moment for a little, honest self-reflection. Forget what your neighbors think. Forget the image you're putting out there online. Just based on this simple formula, looking at your own life, you got to ask yourself a really direct question. Are you playing offense, actively building real, lasting wealth? Or are you just playing defense, trying to build an image for other people to see?
So if these millionaires next door aren't who we think they are, then how in the world did they get there? The researchers didn't just find these people. They actually sat down with them, they interviewed them, they studied their lives in crazy detail, and they uncovered this pattern, this kind of blueprint of 7 common threads, 7 core habits that ran through almost every single self-made millionaire they talked to.
First, and this is the absolute foundation of everything, they live well below their means. I mean, they consistently spend less than they earn, and they do it for decades. It's not about being cheap, it's about making a conscious choice to put freedom ahead of flash. Second, they're super efficient with how they use their time, energy, and money. They're spending hours every month studying their investments and planning their financial future, not out shopping for status symbols. Third, they believe that financial independence is way more important than showing off high social status. They couldn't care less about keeping up with the Joneses. They're totally focused on their own balance sheet. Fourth, their parents didn't give them what the book calls economic outpatient care. Basically, they had to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, which taught them discipline and self-reliance. Fifth, because of that, their own adult kids are economically self-sufficient. They teach their kids how to build wealth, not just how to spend it. Sixth, they are masters at spotting opportunities where other people see nothing, often in these kind of dull, unglamorous businesses. And finally, seventh, they chose the right occupation. And this doesn't always mean being a doctor or a lawyer. It usually means finding a field, often as a business owner, where their income isn't tied to how they look or where they live.
You know, that third habit, valuing freedom over status, it's just so powerful. There's this story in the book about a couple married for 42 years. They'd lived this modest, disciplined life, always saving and investing. So the researchers asked the wife to name their single biggest luxury purchase. And they were expecting, a car or a big trip, maybe some jewelry. But she just paused for a moment, looked at her husband, smiled, and said something so profound. Financial independence, that's our luxury. Just the ability to wake up every morning and know with complete certainty that they were in control of their own lives. That was the real prize all their discipline had bought them.
Now, I want to spend a little more time on one of the most counterintuitive and honestly controversial findings in the entire book. It's that idea they call economic outpatient care. This is all about the financial help that well-meaning parents give to their grown-up kids and how, with the absolute best of intentions, it can just backfire in a spectacular way.
The research here it's brutal. The more financial gifts and cash handouts that adult children get, the less wealth they tend to build on their own. It feels like love, and it definitely comes from a place of love, but what it often creates is this deep-seated dependency. It just strips away any reason to budget, to sacrifice, to save aggressively, because there's always a safety net. The children learn to live a lifestyle that their own income can't actually support, and they start to see the handouts not as a gift, but as something they're entitled to. It just poisons the well. The parents feel taken for granted, the kids feel controlled, and those hard-earned lessons of discipline and waiting for what you want, they're just never learned. A safety net doesn't just catch you when you fall. Sometimes it keeps you from ever learning how to climb.
The millionaires in the study, they handle this completely differently. They give their children the gifts of a good education and a strong work ethic, not just cash to spend. One wealthy father shared his rule for his kids. I will pay for your education, every single penny. I will help you start a business if you come to me with a solid, well-researched plan, but I will not subsidize your lifestyle. The car you drive, the house you buy, the vacations you take, that is all on you. I mean, those are tough words from a loving dad. But what happened? Every single one of his kids is now financially independent. They're out there building their own wealth, continuing a legacy of production instead of just consuming one.
Okay, so we've covered the big ideas, the high-level principles. But what does this actually look like in the real world, day to day? How do these habits actually translate into practical actions? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the millionaire's mindset in action. First off, they budget, and they track their spending. And this isn't something they stop doing once they become wealthy. Actually, it's how they got there in the first place. The book tells this great story of a couple with a net worth of $3.7 million who still sat down at their kitchen table every Sunday evening to go over their spending for the week. They weren't doing it because they were cheap. They were doing it because they were intentional. And this really shows a key mindset shift. For them, a budget isn't about restriction. It's about alignment. It's just a tool to make sure their money is flowing toward the things that actually matter, toward their goals, their values, and ultimately, their freedom.
Let's talk about cars for a sec, because cars are the #1 place where the millionaire next door's behavior is just totally different from the norm. The book shares this amazing story of a multimillionaire who walks into a Lexus dealership. His daughter's graduating from college, and he wants to get her a reliable car. So the young salesman, seeing this obviously wealthy guy, immediately starts pushing a brand new $60,000 model. The man listens patiently, and then he just says, "No, I'm looking for something used, 3 or 4 years old, reliable but reasonable." He finds the perfect one, negotiates a good price, and writes a check. As they're finishing up the paperwork, the salesman, just overcome with curiosity, asks the man what he drives himself. And the millionaire replies, "A 1995 Buick. It's got 180,000 miles on it, and it runs perfectly."
That man, worth over $50 million, he understood a truth that most of us just miss. He knew that the second you drive a brand new car off the lot, it loses thousands of dollars in value. It's what they call a depreciating asset. He would much rather have that money working for him in his investment portfolio, making more money. Because here's the thing, luxury cars aren't really purchased with money. They're purchased with your future freedom. Every expensive car payment is like a small mortgage on your life, a piece of your future that you've traded for a status symbol today. So you got to ask yourself, what is your car really for? Is it for transportation or is it for validation?
You know, another fascinating thing from the study is the kind of work these millionaires actually do. So many of them are self-employed entrepreneurs, but they're not running glamorous tech startups or high-end consulting firms. Nope. They own paving companies, mobile home parks, welding shops, scrap metal recycling centers. The book tells us about a guy named Charlie who never even finished high school. He just saw a need and started a business cleaning commercial kitchens, a dirty, unglamorous job. But over 40 years of just hard work, great service, and relentless saving, he built it into a multi-million-dollar business. His story proves that wealth isn't just for the Ivy League elite. It's available to anyone with the grit to provide value, live below their means, and stay disciplined for the long haul.
So after all the research, all the interviews, all the data, what's the real secret? When the researchers asked their millionaire subjects to name the single most important factor in their financial success, the most common answer wasn't a hot stock tip or being a genius or even just hard work. The most common answer, by a long shot, was self-discipline. The discipline to save when it's so much easier to spend. The discipline to invest consistently, month after month, year after year, whether the market is up or down. The discipline to just ignore what everyone else is doing and run your own race. See, wealth isn't about some complex secret formula. It's about doing a few simple things, doing them right, and doing them consistently for a very, very long time. It's about laying one brick perfectly every single day.
Ultimately, everything we've talked about in this explainer, all the research, all the stories, it all comes down to a really basic choice. It's a choice between two different paths, two different mindsets, and two very, very different destinations for your life.
And here is the really uncomfortable truth. Most people don't fail to build wealth because they can't. They fail because looking rich feels better in the short term than the slow, quiet, and honestly, often boring process of actually becoming rich. It's just easier to lease the BMW than it is to invest that same money every single month. The millionaires next door, they just chose differently. They chose future freedom over present approval. They chose long-term security over short-term status. And one day, while everyone else was still busy trying to look successful, they just quietly became it.
If you take only one single thing away from this today, please let it be this. Wealth is what you save, not what you spend. It's the money you don't see. That person in the 10-year-old car next to you at the stoplight might have more financial freedom than you could ever imagine. So just start today. Start small. Start right where you are. Build something, not for show, not for status, but for yourself, for your own freedom, and for your family's future.
Because the millionaire next door could be you. It really, really could. The blueprint is simple, and it's available to every single one of us. The only question left is the one you have to answer for yourself. Which path are you on?